for those of you who haven't heard me talk before, I apologize in advance. I'm no longer any fun to have at a dinner party. All I see is the bad data. So if you say something to me about climate change, I'll say, 23% of black people don't have houses. I mean, I just know all the data. I get it all day long. So it is. So you're gonna get to hear what I have. I give two set speeches. This is not one of them. One's called "Things That Keep Me Up at Night," and then the other one is "Just because we're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get us." And so I will say we actually have done a professional panel already for the convention. We recorded it on Zoom. Rick's going to put it up on the site probably early next week. And it's on disparities in contracting, government contracting, which is something near and dear to my heart and Dr. Steele, who worked really hard in Cleveland. I know a lot of y'all, if anyone from Cleveland's here, but they had a big issue with Sherwin-Williams, where Sherwin-Williams was building a new facility, $1 billion facility, and had no black contractors, right? So it was a big issue, and we've been fighting on it. And as we've found over the last couple of years, a lot of disparity studies have come out and shown that, indeed, New Jersey disparity study showed that like 0.3% of their contracts went to African Americans, right? So we'll never get to economic parity is probably too hopeful of a word. Any economic inclusion, any kind of economic inclusion, as long as those numbers persist. So the disparities in government contracting is something we care deeply about. So you'll be able to watch that video when it comes up in a few days. But today I'm going to engage you guys. We're just going to talk about, Dr. Steele's going to join me. He's doing an interview. He's going to join me, talk about some of the things. But I'm going to cover 6 basic subjects here. First one is just journal economics, from contracting to digital equity, opportunities with government opportunities, DE&I, all the anti-DE&I activities. We're then going to turn to AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, because they've targeted several of our African American candidates for defeat in these majority black districts. Something Dr. Steele wrote a letter on several months ago to AIPAC asking them to stop. They refused to stop. And we have to figure out what our next steps are going to be, because it can't be that a 2% minority with a foreign agenda is controlling who gets elected in black districts that we fought so hard to get, all those years. Many of you fought so hard to get created. So Dr. Steele's looking at a strategy. We're looking at a strategy to combat that. I mean, one is money, but 2, we just need to be more aware. So we're going to talk about that. Then I'm going to spend some time talking about the elections. Trump, Mrs. Harris, the nature of the race, some of the policy issues that we've seen come up around this over the last couple of weeks. And we'll, and of course I'll engage you guys. And then there'll be some call to actions that we'll talk about. And several of you guys in here I know, Josephine and Jen, you guys are very active. We're doing events around the country. We're talking to guys, my friends in Detroit want to do some stuff. So we're trying to raise the profile and get young people, especially our young people. They're susceptible to a lot of messages because we're not engaging them at the level that we should. So I want to talk about that. So anybody have any questions before I get started?
I have a quick one. Are you a paid lobbyist? Or?
No. So I used to be a registered lobbyist. I am no longer a registered lobbyist.
No, I meant to say registered lobbyist.
Yes. No, it's not. So no, I am a straight up advocate. I have a group that's a C4, so I do a lot of political advocacy, very little direct lobbying. So.
Okay. Are you familiar with the 1977 Community Investment Act that requires banks to lend to minorities in the area?
CRA, yes.
Still enforced, and is it being monitored?
It was modified. It was modified 3 years ago. So we can talk about CRA if you want to talk about it, but it's yeah. The only thing I'll say about that before I get to CRA was the banking system in general was never meant for regular people. So we've been trying to force regular people into a system that wasn't meant for them. So if you go back to the Banking Act of the National Bank Act of 1864, when Lincoln created a national banking system, it was really meant for commerce. It wasn't meant for individuals. And if you look at the history of banking over time, several entities have come into the paradigm to try to change the way banks operate. So there's savings and loans got created, credit unions got created, what they call industrial loan companies got created. So there's a lot of companies that got created to try to take the pressure off the banking system to have to incorporate individuals. So CRA was never really a great idea because banks weren't set up to really manage regular people. But we can talk a little bit more about how. Okay.
Some black contractors in Birmingham took a stand, a new project was being created, and they said they did not have the percentage of participation they were supposed to have.
Yeah.
But they backed down, and I wonder why they backed off of that. And they went ahead with the project.
So that participation number is the same across the country, right? Like I said, New Jersey is 0.3, New York is 0.3. In federally, SBA just did a report, it's 0.3 at SBA and nationally. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's, I talked to someone from Georgia, the Georgia number was about the same. So that is, in fact, we looked at Alabama, Birmingham particularly, because you have a black mayor, had a black mayor for like 40 years, and their contract number is about 0.3% for minority contractors. So. Sure, Kevin Kimble. First name is spelled like Kevin. The E is long. It's a Gaelic, Texas thing. So, Kevin. It's spelled like Kevin. But it's pronounced Kevin. Sure. Kimble, Kimble. B-L-E. You're welcome.
So you're quoting minority numbers, or you're quoting specifically
African American numbers.
Because we know when you say minority, it's a larger number.
Yeah, not when I'm not counting white women. I'm not counting.
All the
Yeah.
time we say the minority number.
Yeah. So I'm not counting those. No, strictly my African Americans for the most part.
All right, thanks.
So let's do economics. One of the things we've been fighting for the last several years is some sort of way to include African Americans into construction, right? I mean, because that is where most of the contracting money is. I mean, and especially after the government put the 1.5 trillion Infrastructure Act into place, they call it the Inflation Reduction Act. There was a lot of money going to be spent. Minority contract, even AASHTO, which is the Highway Association, admitted that there was huge discrepancies or disparities in the number of minority contractors able to get these contracts. So we put an initiative in place. Dr. Steele went to Cleveland was an example. We've worked with Congress. We've talked to the DOJ. Anything we could do to try to change those numbers, but it's incredibly hard to change, and that's where all of you come in, right? So this is a thing that everybody in this room, has to get together. As a group, African Americans spend no money and little time on advocacy, right? We don't change rules, we don't change laws, she's not here. We had an event back in February, and we went to Capitol Hill, and the first thing the person with us noticed that there weren't that many African Americans walking in the halls of Congress, right? Oh, there, Josephine, you were with us. There we go, Josephine was there. Yeah, and that can't be the case, right? I mean, if you're not in those halls, if you're not asking, people don't know your issues. Most African Americans don't know that we only get 0.3% of the contracts, right? I mean, even though they're 20% set asides. And I asked you in the audience, I'm going to ramble a little bit, but try to follow my train of thought. So one of my friends from law school sent a guy to me who started his own organization to try to help minorities get into dentistry. And so he said, Keith, when you talk to him about, how to put one of these together, and we get to the conversation, inevitably it turns to a conversation about how do you raise money. And I said to him, well, what would it take for you to give money to your organization or to an organization like yours? And he goes, I never thought about that. I don't know what it would take for me to give. I said, well, if you aren't going to give, how can you ask other people to give? And so it becomes a deal that we have to make a decision. The people who don't like us, the anti-D&I people, they spend millions of dollars making sure we can't even give $25,000 grants to people. But none of us spend money on the other side trying to help that. And so the question becomes, we have to encourage and be much more aggressive in our communities with our pastors, our mega pastors, with, our lawyers, our doctors. Everyone should be ponying up $30 a month, $50 a month, whatever they can afford to do advocacy work, right? I mean, they didn't defeat affirmative action by luck, right? I mean, they spent a ton of money getting rid of affirmative action. They can spend a ton of money getting rid of abortion. They changed, I mean, they're committed to changing the paradigm, and we are not. I mean, we can complain, we can even march, but that's not going to change, unless we hold, until we defeat people at the ballot box, it's not gonna matter. So for instance, AIPAC did like Cori Bush and Jabal Momin's stance on Israel, so they spent $8 million in each race to defeat them, right? So what does that mean? The next people who get elected there are gonna be pro-Israel, right? I mean, Israel. And that's something we should never let happen, and it's something that we shouldn't let happen again if we want our politics to be taken seriously. Right? I mean, that is a very big deal because it sends a message to everyone. Because Dr. Steele, when he wrote the letter to AIPAC, sent it to the congressional leadership, saying, hey, what do you guys do? They didn't do anything because those donors, they didn't want to lose those donors' money. So that means we are not sponsoring our elected officials at the level we need to make them responsive to us. It's easy to be against discrimination, much harder to be for parity in government contracting, right? Much harder to be for ensuring that the menthol cigarette ban doesn't disproportionately hurt African Americans, right? Those are all things that we have to spend our efforts on changing, because we worked on this project and it was really insulting. The government was gonna ban menthol cigarettes as a way to promote black health, right? So we're like, so you're saying that the most important thing you can do for black health is to make sure black people can't smoke menthol cigarettes. That was their whole effort. And we're like, so that's insulting at a lot of levels. I mean, one, it means you don't even understand how we live. And on top of that, the administration hadn't done anything about government contracting. We can't get contracts, we can't get housing, but they're gonna ban us from smoking menthol cigarettes and say they've helped us. And so that was, so we sent letters. Dr. Steele did an ad. He actually did an interview, and they postponed that rule. But the question became, so are you saying that white people can smoke cigarettes all they want, so it's fine. They're smart enough to smoke, they know what they're doing, they're better at it than we are, they're healthy, so it's fine. Or are you saying black people are too stupid to know how to smoke responsibly, so they have to ban their cigarettes? It was just, the thing made no sense from any kind of thing. And so those are the kinds of things I'm saying the people in this room have to be aware of, because these changes get made suddenly. All of a sudden you wake up one day and the cigarette store is closed, you can't get a cigarette, and you're like, well, or someone's going to jail for smoking a menthol cigarette, and you're like, what the hell happened? So it's, if you leave nothing here with nothing else from me today, the most important thing is you have to engage in advocacy. And I don't care if you only have an extra $1 to give. When you're going, I know some of y'all are ministers, so forgive me for saying this, but if you're going to church on Sunday, give half to the minister and half to an advocacy organization, because you've got to have advocacy. I mean, otherwise, we had a panel with black churches. They're taking property from black churches. They're rezoning them so they can take. So it doesn't matter, if your minister has your tithe, if his church can't get rezoned or gets rezoned out of existence, and BlackRock comes in and buys the whole neighborhood. Anybody have a question? I'm sorry. Any questions? I've said a lot. Okay. When you look at the overall kind of construct of the economy, Dr. Steele's, the reason why he's not here yet is black farmers. They just gave $2 billion for black farmers. So the problem with that is that the rules to get the money are not accessible to the black farmers, right? So you have to go to. We've done some research on this before this came out, just in terms of USDA and SBA are the two most racist organizations in the government, right? So they exclude, they make it incredibly impossible for minorities. That's why they had to do a settlement to get access to the funding. So the application process, from what we understand it, is it's like a 40-page application, right? 40-page application, and it's got to get approved by the people who denied you money in the first place. Right, so you've got to go through the farm bureau, the local farm bureau, which is not friendly to minority farmers, to get the money. We've actually pushed back against some of that. There's another project coming online. I've talked to some of y'all about this on digital equity, right? So the government's got billions of dollars for broadband updates. And so it's called the BEAD program. What's it called? BEAD, B-E-A-D. Stands for broadband equipment, something in the program. But it's run out of the NTIA, which is the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. It's broken up into three parts. The first part is digital build out, so laying pipes, making sure everyone has access to high-speed internet in their communities. And a lot of underserved communities and rural communities are going to get left out of that, so they have a process in place where you can appeal what the maps look like. And so we've worked with some people in Alabama and other places where we know the map, they've looked at the maps and know they're going to be underserved. But the process by which you can complain, you have to already know to go online to the broadband office to look for the dates for the application process, right? So we have people set up to do that already, so we're communicating, but most communities don't even know that the map's been placed, right? And so they're gonna set this up and then you'll figure out your church or your community, your area is out of the map or has bad service. One thing. Second part of this is what they call digital equity, where they're spending money to make sure underserved communities can access internet properly, right? Now, this process is going to be done in two parts. One is they gave money to the states to do their own programs, and then they give national grants for national organizations to go into states and do programming, right? So what we figured out is, we've worked in a lot of these states, getting money to the Detroit SCLC office or Detroit church is going to be very hard to do because you have to apply for the grants, hard to get them, just incredibly difficult. We worked in Tennessee, for instance. In 2018, Tennessee had $750 million, so $1 billion in unspent workforce money. They refused to spend it to help underserved people get jobs, right? So we know that those processes don't work for us, right? And we worked with the legislature there, trying to help them do a program for them based on stuff we'd already done. Not only did the governor say no, he changed the way the money could be spent to make it about family planning. Right? So he'd rather give away money than help underserved people get jobs in his state. Right? So as this digital equity money comes out, we're trying to hold states accountable to make sure, like we're in South Carolina, they want to give $10,000 grants to people. Well, you can't do anything with $10,000 grant. It's not even worth applying for. It's not even worth applying for. You can't do anything with it. So we're trying to work with them in other places to have some paradigms that they can apply and make sure that the money's being used. And Tennessee had another thing. They had gotten a grant from the FCC, which we had actually gotten a grant too from the FCC to get people free internet, free cell phones. Remember, the government was giving away free cell phones, and so they had that program. And South Carolina Broadband Office got one of those grants and never deployed the money. They let the money expire. So they basically sucked out $500,000 worth of resources so no one could ever use it. Still letting some other state get it. So I'm saying a lot, again, I'm giving you a lot of bad news, right? So I said they gave me a podium, so you guys got to suffer through this. But this is what I see every day. This is what my life entails every day. So the other part of this digital equity thing, and this is, I've talked to several of you about this. The big foundations are trying to get that because it's like $3 billion, right? So the big foundations are trying to get in the middle of this money. So like they did a big seminar, the Ford Foundation, the Pew, and several others did a big, because they have the wherewithal to apply to the government to get the big chunks and then try to subcontract it down to other people. Well, what happens is, after 2 or 3 cuts, there's not enough money to do anything with the money, right? So basically, they just get a lot of money to oversee a program, to oversee a program, to oversee a program that doesn't have any money. We're early enough in this process that we've been talking with NTIA and working with them to try to make sure that some of that money goes to organizations that are directly working with communities, right? So that they don't have to, it's not fair to ask a local church to try to do because it's a 20% match on the grant money, right? So it's not fair to say, okay, you want $100,000, you got to have $20,000 match for the $100,000. It just cuts everybody off. So these are the kind of things that when we're talking about the government, we're not aware of, right? We've got to be much more cognizant. And I'm lucky or unlucky enough to be in a situation where I see this all the time, and I have 2 economists that report back to me people around the country who report back. We hear all these stories, and I'm trying to share that with you. But it's important that everyone in here go on their state government website once a month and figure out what's going on, because they don't tell you what's going on. If you don't go online, you never know this is happening, right? These grants we're talking about, we actually call. We have an assistant. She called through all 30 states we're operating. So she called 30 states and asked their broadband offices what the dates were, right, for the grant making. Turns out we called Tennessee. They had a separate grant that was open, and so we got one of our people to apply for the grant. No one in the community even knows what's going on, right? So if you're not engaged, you just aren't engaged, and it's a huge problem. I think I've beaten that horse to death for now. Let's talk about APAC. This thing, how, again, if our members of Congress are not responsible to us, the ones who vote for them, then who are they responsible to, right? And it's not just about Israel, right? A lot of these donors are big-time tech guys. So are we going to let them have antitrust protection forever? If they're going to fight us, are we going to talk about the CDF, not CDFI, but the banking system? We were talking. He asked a question about using. What did you ask me about? What was the question? CRA, the CRA, right? So these guys are all bankers or CRA. So what do we do to defend ourselves against that? Because they have, AIPAC's just, Israel's just one issue. They have lots of, these guys are trying to get the FTC commissioner fired, who's working really hard on antitrust and just won the case against Google. And I don't think we pay attention enough. We obviously, I don't know how many of you guys do raise your hand, knew that Cori Bush got defeated. There's like, yeah, so, yeah. What about Jamal Bowman? Yeah, so that is the kind of thing that we cannot allow to, we can allow it if we want it, but then we can't complain that we don't have members of Congress that are coming after our will. Just like in Cleveland, Dr. Steele, I'll steal some of his thunder on this, but the black mayor and the black city council and still couldn't get contracts, right? So at some point, who do they work for? Right. So, Dr. Steele, I've been giving them all the data that you have to listen to me talk about every day. So they're probably pretty depressed. So they're nice and depressed, so you can go ahead and tell them why.
Thank you. Thank you.
So here's the vision. I've covered economics, talked about digital equity, talked about disparities and D&I and APAC. I haven't gotten to the rest, but.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I just talked to the press, and what is so frustrating is that Kevin and I was talking about, the black farmers just been awarded $2 billion, drop in the bucket. Okay. $2 billion, but what Kevin and I was, and they are owed $5 billion more. But first of all, they got to fill out a 40-page application. Secondly, got to go through the USDA, which is the most racist agency with the federal government. I just speak the facts. This country is racist, and all it takes is the power of the pen. And, I know folks don't like to hear this, but glad you came from Dallas. You have to tell the truth in order to resolve the issues. You have to tell the truth. And as I spoke when I was in Selma 2 days ago, and I was telling them what's so sad is that so many people don't even know we're going back to Jim Crow. You're going back to the cotton fields and don't even know it. You cannot, more folks being evicted. That's why God told me it's time now for me to step aside from being president day to day, because I don't need no restraints. I'm going to be president, CEO, emeritus till I die. So I'm gonna always be SCLC. I'm gonna help SCLC. But like I came to SCLC in 2004, Kevin, people said SCLC was dead. You can't save SCLC, Charles. What you going over there for? All in the headlines. And Atlanta Journal-Constitution had a headline say SCLC is dead. And the only way it can be revived is God himself got to come down from heaven and save it. That was in front page of the newspaper. And I had a press conference the next day. I said, I saw your headline. Oh, there was a lot of press. I saw your headline. I said, but I had a talk with God last night too. And God told me, you're right. He could come down and save this organization, but he ain't coming. He said he ain't coming, but he sent me. He sent me. And I had the biggest fight from people, you know. In case you don't know it, 40 to 50% of black folks, color folks, Negroes, fought Dr. King. They love him now because he dead. Dr. King was the most hated man in America. And black folks did not support him no more than 40 to 50%. So my point being is that there comes a time you have to keep moving. Who want to give up a Senate seat? I gave that up. Most folks don't know the difference between a state senator and a U.S. senator, and I didn't tell them. I'm the senator. That's all. That covers all aspects of being a senator. Go to the hospital. Let the senator up front. I didn't say no state senator. They said senator. So I gave all that up to sleep in my car. Talking about economics. I spent all the $1,000, not thousands, the $1,000 that my wife had just built her a brand new house. And I'm sleeping in my car. And I'm taking sponges, not a shower. Get to the office early with a suit and tie on. Beat everybody there. And then one day my body just shut down with aching all over. And Reverend Avalor said, man, you need to go to Tuscaloosa and sleep in a bed. Reverend Williams, I was hurting all over. So I'm closing with this. People must understand. Who was the president? Y'all help me. Who was the president June the 25th, 2013? Somebody said, Kennedy. I said, oh my Lord. Somebody said, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Who was the president? June the 12th. Ain't knocking nobody, I'm talking facts. The Emancipation Proclamation came about because of what? Executive order. It didn't pass Congress until 2 years later it was ratified. But you got to have courage with these folks who saying they represent you. And I don't fool with scared folks because scared folks get you killed. I don't fool with them. So, you know, I'm out here by myself with my little pretty wife. I didn't say pretty. You heard me? When I was growing up, they say putty. That's what the old folks said. Well, am I right, Bishop? So it's a lonely position. I always been by myself. And they said, Charles, why are you out there on the limb? That's where the fruit is. I got to get on the limb and shake the tree, so you stay down there because you scared and you get a bucket and catch some of the fruit. That's where we are. So as I close, I'm working with Kevin. We're getting ready to do a lot of big things on economic development. You can't go to the bank and get a loan by the general manager. And I got let me change that. My wife got A1 credit. She keep me up to speed on whatever I need. But the point is, you can't go to the bank to get a loan. You go through an underwriter, somebody you never met and never will see. And if you got the name Charles Steele or Kevin Kimble, they know who you are. They gonna deny you. Kevin Kimble, where he from? No, he's not gonna get the loan. So, as I close, corporate America has to respond to us regardless of DEI. I can't close without telling them Edward Bloom.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, Edward Bloom. Have you told them?
No, I left you a little bit.
Edward Bloom, he's a Jew. Born in Ben Harbor, Michigan, Bishop. Ben Harbor, Michigan, and he's the biggest racist you ever want to see. After all what the Jews been through, he said we don't need no special privileges. We should be treated like everybody else. How in the world can we be treated like everybody else when the white community owns 98% of the land?
Don't want you to have anything. And don't want you to have your 1.2. Right. Don't want you to have your 1.2.
That's Edward Bloom. He been fighting against us for 30 years. Right. That's how you got, when y'all found out who the president was, he could have done an executive order. Don't let nobody just call they got your pigmentation of your skin that they represent you. They in the system too. Politics has never freed the oppressed. Never. The oppressed must free politics. I'm finished.
Don't go. But I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, so stay close by. Because we did the APAC, but you just talked about Bloom. But the election, we're gonna talk about the election, so I'm gonna throw a couple things out.
All right.
You know, it's an easy vote for me. Probably other people in this room, it's an easy vote, but from some of our younger people, it's not because of what Dr. Steele said. You know, life under Biden has not been better than life under under Trump for people, and that's what people don't get. Like your finances, I was in an Uber yesterday morning, Uber driver's telling me his car insurance, he has a 2013 Honda Odyssey minivan. His insurance is $1,600 every 6 months. So it's $3,200 a year in car insurance on a car that's only worth $8,000, right? He's working for Uber, and he's making 60 hours a week, $500 a week, right? That guy is susceptible to Trump. I mean, he doesn't care about, you know, what Trump did to women or what. I mean, this is like his life is, and Trump just said, I'm not going to tax you on tips. I'm not going to tax you on your Social Security. He's saying things to people. Now, it's crazy because we got a $35 trillion deficit, and seriously, you know, Dr. Steele was kind enough to agree with my craziness when I said, hey, we should be against increasing the debt ceiling. We should join the Republicans and say we're not going to treat the debt ceiling because these crazy white people vote for these nuts. They should lose their Social Security. I mean, I don't think they don't understand. Everyone has a free vote, right? And I encourage you to all your members of Congress, you're not for borrowing any more money. You'd rather see the government live under its own thing. I mean, you agree with me, right, Dr. Steele?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So that is our official position, that we should, if they want to burn it down, then let them burn it down, because what they're doing is they're burning it down on our backs, and they're the ones who get all the money. I mean, but also I forget the percentage of people that don't have homeowners insurance, the number of people who can't afford car insurance, right? Donald Trump doesn't believe in climate change. I just had a tornado. My wife had to go into the basement in Virginia for a tornado. We haven't had a tornado in 30 years. Lived here 30 years, never had a tornado. I don't think people appreciate, we're not doing a good enough job. This race shouldn't be close at all. That people are willing to consider Trump is scary at a level that I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Women, he's got 57% of women. I thought women, maybe I'm wrong, there's women in this room, maybe bodily autonomy is not a big deal, but people forget, it wasn't until 1988 that women could rent apartments without a man, right? But they seem perfectly willing to go back. So I encourage you, Dr. Steele, you say something about this, because
let me go back to women.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks don't know this. The civil rights movement freed white women more than anything or anybody. White women was enslaved too, but it's a different type of enslavement. It's a different type. But they were freed under the 1965 Voter Rights Act. And what is really dangerous about this situation is that America has never asked for help. America has the racist mentality that it has, which is a virus. It's contagious. It's no different than COVID. Racism is a virus. So as I go to my seat, and I sure don't want to, but I can't talk too much, I just want to let you know that We're getting ready to buy properties. I can't do that on the SCLC because on the SCLC I have to deal with a lot of other civil rights issues. My issue going to be money, currency, economics. And many of people are afraid to talk about what the real issue is. Kevin and I going to have a think tank, and we're going to educate folks in terms of, let me just say this, the diameter of your mind is determined by the circumference of your environment. Go ahead, Steele. Go ahead, Steele. Oh, I know you like it. I know you like it. Yeah. It's talking about you are who you are because of who you associate with. Woo! How can I go talking about getting some money when folks look at me and say, Steele ain't got nothing? What are you talking about? Well, who is Steele? I don't need to hear those negative concerns. So the diameter of your mind, the way you think of your mind is determined by the circumference of your environment. Who is that you sitting next to, Bishop? Who is that you sitting next to?
This is my vice president.
Okay.
And he got money.
I love it. Kevin said he need to be sitting next to him. So as I go to my seat, it hurts me that Edward Bloom, and he's not a lawyer, but he got lawyers supporting him. The diversity of schools, colleges. Look the name up, Edward Bloom. That's why we're going back. But all the other rednecks, who I call racist folks, and some of them are black. Don't get me wrong now. Racism ain't just about white folks. There's some black folks. And you're probably talking about 50 to 60% that's fighting us. They fought Dr. King. They fought Dr. King. So it's a systemic situation. But if you're not afraid, we got to do more than just have workshops. We got to come together and pool our resources, our money. And one thing about it, I was over in Israel, last point. I'm going to show you how divisiveness works. A year ago, my wife and I was over in Israel. And she was invited by the First Lady of Israel on a tour of women in the Bible. Israel was getting ready to have a civil war. You ain't going to see this on CNN. I don't know why the other station won't show it. Because they don't want you to know the whole story. But y'all crazy enough to bring Steele into this microphone to tell you the truth. And I never met a microphone I didn't like. I like all microphones because I'm able to tell somebody something. Israel was getting ready to have a civil war. Now I'm going to ask you the question. What was it over? Anybody know? The name of Jesus Christ. It was over the name of Jesus Christ. Tanya, I see you. I see you. It was over the name of Jesus Christ. The Orthodox Jews were telling Netanyahu, if you didn't pass a bill to denounce the name of Jesus Christ, and anybody who mentioned the name Jesus Christ in public would go to prison for 3 years. They were fighting, not violently, but they was in each other's face and protesting every day. I told my wife on Jericho Road, we were there because she was leading the tour. She dedicated a park in Mrs. King's name. I said, baby, we're going to have to get out of here. I said, don't you know the Palestinians watching this? Don't you know they watching this? That's how they were able to come in on those gliders, those paragliders. And Israel got the best technology in the world. I go to Israel like I go to Tuscaloosa. Been going there for many of years. They got the best technology in the world. Why they couldn't detect that? Because they fighting each other. That's what I'm saying about us. Fair-minded thinking people, all background, black, white, green, blue. We got to come together. We can't fight each other. That's why this system is beating up on us. That's why they're putting folks in office who won't advocate that they're getting ready to gut the 1965 Voter Rights Act. Nobody said it. But 50 of us that was at the U.S. Supreme Court, June the 25th, 2013, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Please don't gut Section 4 and Section 5. 50 of us. Had it come from a bigger source or from the politicians saying what was going to happen, you'd have 50 million people down at the U.S. Supreme Court. 50 million versus 50. And we never would have gone back to Jim Crow. Ladies and gentlemen, you under Jim Crow. Same as it was in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, until we got the 1965 Voter Rights Act. I spoke in Berlin, Germany. President Gauck had invited me over, and I told them that we had lost the 1965 Voter Rights Act. Man, that church like to go on in a riot in itself. Why didn't nobody tell us? And they called a couple names. Why they didn't tell us? If y'all lose Steele, we lose. That's what the whole world is saying. If African Americans go back, we all go back as poverty-stricken people. Only a few rich folks will survive. We'll be peasants. That's what the perception is. That's why I said I have to step aside, because I got to move on. I got to move on. God got better plans, not for me, but for us. But I'm going to take you there. Thank you so much.
Your phone's over there. These are my phones. Your phone's over there.
Ooh, you got two?
I got two. So that's what we talk about every day. And, you know, Dr. Steele has done a wonderful job. He has courage that not other people have. I mean, and that is one of the things that brought me to SCLC with him, because we can be against the debt ceiling, right? We can be against people banning menthol cigarettes, saying it's fit, right? You know, we can, be against AIPAC. No one else is. I mean, Dr. Steele's the only person, only civil rights leader to say anything about AIPAC when they did. He's the only one to write them a letter asking them not to do this.
Did you tell about the people that came after in the elections?
Yeah, we was talking about Cory Bush's. Yeah. So
If you don't agree with them, they coming at you.
come out if you don't do whatever. And it's a lot of issues, but there are other issues. I mean, like the money issues that they care about. This talking about the CRA and everything else. So it's a tough deal. I won't belabor this, but I know everyone in this room is going to vote for Trump, right? So I'm going to vote for Kamala. So I don't really need to go through that process. If y'all start voting there, but I'll see who's listening. But the call to action, Dr. Steele, what would be your call to action? I mean, he talks to Edward Bloom, but there's 4 other Jews. There's the 2 guys who work for Trump, and another guy, the guy out of whose wife went after the Harvard professor. So there's 4 of them. There are 4 of them. Like the 4 most racist people in America are Jewish. I mean, it's scary. I mean, we've talked to the JCRCs and others about this, and they're like, yeah, we don't agree with them. We don't know what to do about them, and they are spending money hand over fist. I mean, those guys actually went out and opened an organization in a district in Texas where they know they can get to the 5th Circuit whenever they want to. We can't compete with that. Dr. Steele's great, but he can't compete with that. He doesn't have $10 million to spread around like that, and so we've got to get aggressive. And I know that's what your future is holding, and I look forward to being helpful wherever I can in that endeavor. But that is, if we don't do that, we will lose. I mean, they had a 40-year plan and they're winning. I mean, they're winning in a way that someone reminded me of last week that I told them about this DE&I stuff 5 years ago. I said, so you told us about the Fearless Fund before it ever became an issue, like that they were going to ban the use of the word black. I mean, it is literally illegal to use the word black in government, in business, right? Across the country, it's illegal, right? You can't, they got rid of, you can't, the Minority Business Development Office at the U.S. Department of Commerce can no longer be focused on minorities, right? So it is one of those things that, and I will leave it here, but Dr. Steele, do you have a call to action that you're really good at that. It's something I should ask everybody in this room to do.
Did you talk to him about the contract in dealing with like Cleveland, Ohio?
Yeah, we talked about it. Yeah, I talked about that. Oh, go ahead.
Before keeping stuck at you, you said it is illegal
Mm-hmm.
to use the term black.
Yes. Yes, that is, if you have a contract that has black in it, it's not valid. That is illegal. You cannot,
If you have what?
a contract that says, that has black in it, that has anything minority-based in it, that is illegal. It's no longer valid.
Okay, but I thought maybe you could direct me to a reference, authoritative reference,
Yeah.
where I can, because that being the case, then we need to elevate that.
Mhm.
Uh,
So I'll give you-
I read a little bit, but I'm not familiar with the illegality.
So, yeah, which is brilliant on the part of the people who are doing this, right? So, here you go. Minority business develop. So they got rid of the 8A program. You knew that, right? Right. So the 8A program. So that if you get rid of, so you have to prove. So you can no longer, because you're a minority, you no longer automatically qualify. You have to prove you've been discriminated against, whatever.
Can you tell them that's small business?
Oh, sorry. The 8A program is a small business program for minority contractors, minority business.
And it's been eliminated.
Yeah, it's been limited. So you can go through, you have to prove you, so being a minority doesn't automatically qualify you. Florida, they got rid of all references to D&I or minority issues in their state, completely, from education to business everywhere. Oklahoma got rid of it, right? So there's like 10 or 15 states that have gotten rid of that. So maybe you consider hyperbole that I said, it's illegal to say the word black, but that is the effective purpose. They didn't say you can't say black, but anything that refers to minorities.
It's like it's unwritten.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah,
Unwritten? Okay, got you.
yeah. You can,
Now I better understand.
yeah. Tell them.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
All that came from Edward Bloom.
Yep.
Edward Bloom. But tell them about the University of North Carolina and
Oh yeah. So they got rid of affirmative action, right? So that was
and they had to pay him $4 million
yeah.
for his expenses.
to win. And so he won the lawsuit, and then the government had to pay his expenses. So
Harvard and University of North Carolina.
yeah. So it is. It's like I said, I'm no longer fun to have at a dinner party because the data is all bad, and we're working at it, but we need everyone to be more. I'm worried that people aren't more upset. Like people seem kind of like it's okay. That's
It's okay.
we lost this right, we lost that right, because there. I mean, and here's. So people remind me all the time that I tell them things years in advance. It happens. Like I told people 20 years ago that abortion would be legal again in our lifetime. They thought I was crazy. But it is not. We are not that many iterations away from them saying that black people can't have bank accounts without a white overseer. I mean, it's not that many. So you talk about the CRA. It is. If you've been to jail, like if you have a criminal record, they could easily deny you a bank account, right? So. The thing is, we're not very far away from women not being able to get apartments anymore, right? I mean, there's not that much of we're not that many steps away from that, and I just think people need to be a little more worried. So. Well, any more questions or any comments, anything I left out? I mean, I could go on. There's lots of more bad news.
I know you got a question.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So based on all the things that you've said,
Because Bloom lives in Austin, Texas.
It's your fault.
he's